You have new in-depth reporting on how the days to come may play out, possibly threatening the certification of the 2024 election. You traveled to 4 battleground states, meeting dozens of election officials, sitting in on many hours of local meetings, and you report, quote, although the Stop the Steal movement of 2020 has evolved into the considerably more sophisticated election integrity movement of 2024, its success is still premised on persuading election administrators of 2 things that are not true: that widespread election fraud is a real and present threat to democracy, and that they have not only the authority but also the legal duty to do something about it. Please tell us more about what you've learned.
Well, I think 2 things, and the preceding conversation was perfect for this, and that is that, first of all, January 6th really was an effort to break certification. At the end of the process, January 6th is the end of the certification process. That process begins at the hyper-local level, at your local election board, your local commission. And what has happened since January 6th is the anger that drove the riot, that had millions of Americans believe in their bones that that election was stolen. It seeped into the grassroots level and into these election boards. And now you've had this phenomenon where board members in this process, who their job is to stamp the vote, the numbers. You can contest fraud. The campaigns can have it out. They are now pressing this new idea that this is not a ministerial act, as it's called. This is discretionary, and we have a duty to stop a fraudulent election.
Wow. And so the defense has actually been hardened this time around our elections. There's a great piece in Time Magazine a few days ago by Barton Gellman just laying out a long piece about how much safer even in 2024 the election is in 2020, when it was incredibly safe as well, according to cyber security experts. So as a practical question, what are these people going to do if they do try to cheat and flip the results of the election? How does that even work? And then there'll be court challenges where some of this will be thwarted, no?
Yes. I mean, every election expert you talk to, every longtime lawyer says, first of all, because it's a mandatory act, this will fail. The courts will come in. There are new provisions in the law that do make it harder. That said, there's a path that could inspire people to try this, as they've been trying to. And that path is that there's a new hard deadline in December by which states must get their votes in. There used to be a softer thing called safe harbor. Now it's a hard deadline. The law does not say what happens if you miss that deadline. Now, again, there are processes that are new to fast track it through the courts, but you need people to agree to do their legal duty. So the fears are, what if you miss the deadline? People don't do their legal duty. Now you start bumping into electoral college deadline. Then you start bumping toward January 6th. It comes to Congress. Now what do we have?
Talk a little bit about the psychology of the people that you interviewed, these people who are responsible for the count in some of these states. Are they doing this because they want to do everything they can to get Donald Trump into office, even if they understand that it's not necessarily the most legal thing to do? Or do they genuinely believe that they have some kind of a duty to be doing this? Because I guess if you genuinely believe there's fraud at play, any of us would fight to get the election result that we thought was the justified one?
It's a great question, and I have to say that the people I was speaking to sincerely believed this. It didn't feel cynical to me. It felt deeply held. And as one commissioner in Washoe County told me, Nevada, that this is her calling, this is her oath. She has to be true to her oath. She'll be lying to certify an election that she believes is fraudulent. Again, even though in the Nevada law, fraud can be dealt with, that's not her job under the law, but she really feels strongly, and I didn't find that to be a partisan ploy. I certainly believe she would like Trump to win. I mean, there's no question, but that didn't seem to be what was driving her as much as this doubt. And I think that's what we as a system have to kind of think about, is that is there, and it is held by millions of people, and it doesn't just go away with the Harris win. It won't even go away with the Trump win.
Joe.
But Jim, it's there because they deliberately lie about it. It's like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump say, well, yeah, what people are saying. that dogs and cats are being eaten in Springfield. Yeah, people actually believe. Well, yeah, people believe that because because they're spreading the lies. I mean, any objective by any people used to say that about Neil Armstrong's landing on the moon. It didn't really happen. It was at a back lot in Hollywood, in Burbank. I do wonder, though. I mean, so this is deeply held. Okay, great. Well, I mean, what about the 63 federal court cases that said there's no widespread vote? What widespread fraud? What about the Supreme Court decision on Pennsylvania, where even the two most conservative members of the court said, you know, the election's done. Us taking this case won't change the outcome of the election. Trump's own people saying it was the safest ever. Chris Krebs saying it was the cleanest election. I could go down the list. But yeah, so they think this, and I'm sorry, let me just say, so what? So what that they're believing lies, that they're reading Epic Times, that they're reading Chinese cult conspiracy websites? Like, tell me, how exactly are you supposed to reason with that when they're ignoring the facts and making up their own?
Well, this is what a lot of election administrators on the other side, and there are far more of them, I assure you, say that they're constantly answering these questions. It actually takes up a lot of resources. I mean, there are these mini dramas.
By the way, when you say on the other side, you're saying people that agree with the facts, because I know a lot of Republican officials, and you can see Republican officials in Maricopa County that repeatedly, Republicans saying, stop lying. This was a fair and safe election. Republican officials in Michigan saying, stop lying. This was a fair and free election. Republican election officials in Florida saying, stop lying. This was a fair and free election. All across America saying this was a fair and free election. So when you're saying the other side, again, not to draw too fine of a point on it, but the other side is not like Republicans or Democrats. No. The other side are facts and conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and it's a coalition. There are Republicans and Democrats and election administrators are all together on this, for sure. And like I said, far more of them. But the issue is that for everything you're saying, every time they come back and say, listen, that's not true. Let's not forget the Dominion settlement. Fox News had to pay Dominion more than $700, almost $800 million to settle a defamation claim about Dominion machines. But that is still coming up in commission meetings all over America. So for everything you're saying, which is true, it still is driving action, and that action has been taking place over 4 years in preparation for, dare I say it, the next few weeks when we're going to see whether this does indeed play out and whether the courts kick in.
It parallels with Kamala Harris's description of Trump last night, consumed by hate and grievance and retribution. He's also surrounded by many tiers of people who are consumed by the same thing. Bob, final word to you. I know you had a lot to say this morning, especially about Donald Trump's instincts. You are someone who has covered him for such a long time.
Yes, many books, much reporting. I think what's the average voter to do? Look at performance. Take the year 2000, the last year he was president. I did 9 hours of interviews with him. This was the year of the coronavirus, and it's all on tape. It's all available. And what did Donald Trump do? He covered up.
He lied to the American people.
He got a warning when there was one coronavirus case in this country, being told by experts saying 650,000 people are going to die of this. He kept saying, I was interviewing him, I said, what are you doing? What's the plan? And he said, oh, don't worry, it's going to go away, just like he was with the, I mean, just one phone call, if I can tell you exactly what happened. This is July 20th, 2020. I called him and I said, what are you doing, Mr. President, about the virus?
Right.
140,000 people have died already, more. He's still saying it's going to go away. So, as for months, I'd been asking him, what's the plan? What are you going to do? Don't worry, it's going to go away. Mr. President, what's the plan? Right out of his own mouth, he said, oh, don't worry, I'll have a plan in 106 days. I thought, what the hell?
Usually he says
that's
2 weeks.
the election day. So it's like you're sitting there and the house is on fire. Somebody says, let's call 911 or the fire department. And what
says,
does Trump do? Say, oh, let's wait 106 days. Look at this. I describe it as his performance as a moral felony. Unambiguously so out of his own mouth and action.
Joe, jump in.
Yeah, so Bob, final question for you.
Yes.
You've written several books on Donald Trump. You've deeply reported on Donald Trump, inside Trump Tower, inside the White House when he was president, and you've reported as deeply on him as anybody. And so if you could answer this question for voters, when he says that he's going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political opponents, when he says he's going to arrest Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, when he calls them enemies from within, when he says he's going to shut down CBS and go after Comcast for treason, and shutting down CBS because he doesn't like the editing of interviews, does he mean that? Would you say take him at his word?
Well, you never can get in the mind of Donald Trump. To a certain extent, I say thank God, because his interest is only himself. He has no idea of what the responsibility to the people is. That's the job of the president. I agree with General Milley. No one is as dangerous. No one so misunderstands the responsibilities.
He says fascist to the core.
Yeah, fascist to the core. And that's a man who worked with him. I interviewed Trump. Hours, get him on the phone. What's going on? Totally irresponsible. Voters, he does not care about you.
Author and associate editor at the Washington Post, Bob Woodward, thank you very much. His #1 New York Times best-selling book, War, is on sale now. Writer-at-large Jim Rutenberg, thank you as well. Jim's new piece is online right now for the New York Times. It is, if you want to understand what's going on here and what the perils are, that's the piece to read.